Hello. It has been a hot minute since I've just made an entire YouTube video. And the reason I came up with this idea was because I had gotten this from the Rolettes. It's their spooky crew. And I was out in Los Angeles recently. Hello, kitty cat. I'm watching my parents' cat. Hello. I don't think you'll be able to see her. And she doesn't let me always pick her up. Hello. This is my parents' cat. I'm watching her while they're away. You don't want to be held? Oh, yes you do. Yes you do. So, I came up with this idea because I was out in Los Angeles recently and I was hanging out with a bunch of wheelchair users, people with other disabilities, and we were talking about Hollywood because a lot of us are in that industry. So, I got this idea of different disabled characters and are they played by disabled actors or not. When I was watching Get Out and my friend Bria asked if the character who was blind was actually blind, and I had to Google it real quick just to double check, make sure I didn't tell her the wrong information. Are you looking at the camera? And the actor was not blind. So I came up with this idea called Disabled Don't Know, where I look up different films that I had seen either growing up or recently with characters that have a disability of some form, and how I knew before looking it up if they did or did not actually have it. You are so precious, but I have to turn off the camera, baby girl. Little honey. Oh, I love you so much. So because of the writers and actors strike with SAG-AFTRA, I don't know when I'll be able to upload this to YouTube per se. So hello to all my patrons first, and hey to all my YouTube followers, hopefully soon. What are you doing, psycho? Oh, she's eating. So the first movie I wanted to discuss was Hush. I chose Hush to be my first little trial for this little series because I was actually discussing it with my sister, and I have a friend named Christina who is deaf. My sister is also deaf. She was born that way, grew up having to learn American Sign Language. Very long story, but I wanted to discuss that movie first. So the story is about a writer through, I believe it was MS. She lost her ability to speak, so she's also mute, as well as her ability to hear. And of course, my cat decides that she wants to eat right now. The actress is Kate Siegel, and the movie premiered in 2016, I believe. I knew of this film because my mother tried watching it, and she said it hit way too close to home for her as a mother to a deaf child, that she could not watch it. So I decided to do it myself and take a peek. So I have notes here because I asked my sister and Christina different little segments of advice on what they saw in the movie versus me as someone who can hear. And Chrissy had told me how it's more common to see people who are deaf or have more decibel loss for hearing. Their eyes move more because their eyes are on higher alert because due to the lack of being able to hear. So that's one thing. And typically able-bodied people don't know about that little tidbit of information, so therefore it lacks in a film with a character who is deaf if the consultant fails to tell them about that detail, or if the consultant themselves is deaf, or if they're just an interpreter and maybe did not realize that tidbit because they haven't lived it. So in the movie, they say that she lost her hearing around the age of 13 and is in her mid-30s, so she had all those years to adapt herself to the world of American Sign Language and being deaf and managing the world around her without the ability to hear. However, her sign language leaves a lot to be desired. A lot of the signs were backwards. A lot of the signs did not make sense because they weren't the right word to what the captions were saying. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, is what I'm saying. So if someone has never had a deaf person in their life, immediate or far off, I don't think they'd ever even pick up on that. However, it was geared towards horror for someone who has a lack of one of the five senses, which is scary in itself, which I love. I love that kind of horror because it hits close to home, but it doesn't hit close to home when you're not even in the same neighborhood. Another thing that I was taught growing up since I learned how to sign at the age of 3 was you have to emote when you sign. And that was very helpful for me as someone who then got into the theater world. I already knew how to express pretty well when communicating with my sister. It's the biggest thing when you learn sign language. It's one of the first things they teach you is you have to kind of over exaggerate and it helps get your point across. It's just something that it's always been done. And when you watch the film, either as someone who is hard of hearing, fully deaf, someone who has relatives or friends who are deaf and you've been around them all the time, you can tell that the actress is trying to remember the signs that the consultant off screen probably just taught her. They did say in an interview with IndieWire that Mike Flanagan and his wife Kate Siegel had done research. They had a consultant who adapted lines or dialogue in the script to be translated, that she learned sign language. I really highly doubt it after watching it. I believe that the consultant was probably just there teaching them as they went, and not so much they researched it for a long period of time. Even with a budget of $1 million, I feel like you could have just done that off the clock. If you love your craft, you want to learn and to adapt, if they couldn't hire someone who already had the disability, even though they are the people who get the least book jobs. As a wheelchair user, I see more auditions catered for me than I do for deaf people, than I do for blind people. I would say deaf people and hard of hearing people get the least amount of auditions and bookings, and it's very unfortunate. So I do have a quote here from Kate. I wanted to just read it off. So Kate had said, according to the IndieWire, quote, "I listen and I apologize. We were given strong education when the film had released. She realizes anything she'd say about why they cast a non-deaf actress is an excuse, but factoring in how few disabled women are on screen at all. Maddie remains a heroine that many disabled and able-bodied fans can see. There is a huge lack of representation," she says. "I think it is a huge disservice to a vibrant community," Flanagan adds. "The conversation about inclusion and representation is a vital one. He hopes that future projects of his can support in that effort." Listen, I'll get into another project of his that I auditioned for, and I can tell you between 2016 to 2020/2021, not a lot had changed when it came to casting disabled characters in previously created disabled roles. In my personal opinion, even if the budget was $1 million, I don't think that that's an excuse to not cast a deaf actor regardless. I have seen indie films, I've seen short films, I've seen films that had no budget that stuck to casting characters the actors that fit the character best. I do believe that that was a cop-out. With the budget I've seen films with lower budgets than this that still cared enough to cast someone who gets it and can make it super realistic. And in horror, that's the main thing you want, is realism in an intruder film. That's what you want, is realism to really scare the audience, especially those who can relate to the character, especially with a disability. So for Hush, for disabled, definitely not. It's very, very evident once you see these things that I've listed or that other people talk about. It was just kind of upsetting. I know that the actress who was in A Quiet Place, who played Reagan, she's deaf, and she says the same thing, that she and her friends went to go see it when it came out, and they were also kind of disappointed. For Hush, I was looking forward to it because I love home invasion, but to me, it just came off that Mike and Kate were more concerned about the home invasion part and escaping a killer versus not so much the character herself. She was pretty much the back burner project on this. And I feel like with this type of movie, you gotta swap the two. You have to make the character super realistic and relatable to different groups of people in order to really feel fear for her. I hope you all enjoyed my first installment. This one was very quick because I didn't really have a lot to say on Hush. It just kind of spoke for itself when I rewatched the film and I read some interviews about them trying to advocate for why they did what they did. I didn't like Hush. I didn't find it disturbing. I didn't find it scary. I thought I was going to because of, my sister, but I did not. But if you guys have movie suggestions with disabled characters, please leave them in the comment section down below. I have a few lined up. I am going to even discuss TV show concepts that I may have auditioned for. I knew friends that auditioned for movies and TV shows. but I might miss some, and I don't want to miss some because I really like this series. I grew up with this idea with my sisters. We would watch these movies and franchises. We would sit there and pick out all of the flaws that the actor was not educated on when it came to, say, being in a wheelchair, being blind, being deaf, all of the fun things. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little series. Again, this is just for fun. I'm not hating on any of the people who make the films or are involved in the films. I just think that this might be a good look for maybe future producers or content creators who want to know what to look out for in the future, because you can't change the past, but we can add on to what's to come. Thank you guys so much for watching.